Johnny Tremaine, Chapter 10, Section 2. The 16th of April. All over Boston, bells were calling everyone to church. As though they had not a care in the world, the British officers crowded into the Episcopal churches, and army chaplains held services for the soldiers in the barracks. Paul Revere was over on the mainland carrying out his mission. Remember, the mission was to warn Hancock and Adams of the British troop moves. Boston looked so usual and so unconcerned, Johnny began to wonder if they all had not made mountains of molehills, imagined an expedition when none was intended. To make mountains of molehills is to make up in your mind that something very small is actually enormous. But Rab was so certain the time was close at hand that he told Johnny that he himself was leaving Boston for good. There would be fighting before the week was out, and he intended to be in it. Now he must report at Lexington. Johnny took this news badly. He could not endure that Rab should leave him, desert him. But as soon as the first shot is fired, no man of military age can possibly get out of Boston. They'll see to it. It's now or never. He did not seem to feel any grief at abandoning Johnny, who sat disconsolately on his bed watching Rab. So disconsolately means extremely upset and not able to be consoled or made to feel better. The older boy was cutting himself a final piece of bread and cheese. How many hundreds of times Johnny had seen those strong white teeth tearing at coarse bread. Rab had been eating bread and cheese all through their first meeting, and that was long ago. It seemed he'd be eating bread and cheese to the end. There was a sick qualm or worry at the pit of Johnny's stomach. He couldn't eat bread and cheese, and it irritated him that Rab could. The older boy was glowing with good health, good spirits. He was 18, 6 feet tall, and a grown man. He looked it as he moved about the low attic, stuffing his pockets with extra stockings, rolling up a shirt and a checkered handkerchief. He is leaving me, and he doesn't care, thought Johnny. Perhaps I'll go too, he offered, hoping Rab would say, I'd give everything I got, even my musket, if you could come, or merely, fine, come along. No, you can't, said Rab. You've got your work to do right here in town. You stick around with your fat friend Dove. Gosh, I'm glad I'll never have to listen to Dove again. But you'll have a fine time with Dove while I cannot stomach Dove. No? I thought he and you were getting on fine together. And there's not one reason why I can't leave for Lexington too, except you don't want me. He knew this was not true, but he could not help badgering or kind of picking on Rab, trying to make him say, I'll miss you as much as you'll miss me. Rab laughed at him. He was going to leave, and he wasn't going to be slopped over. Johnny was gazing at him sullenly. Rab took the extra stockings from his pocket, untied his handkerchief, and added them to his shirt and other necessities. You want to go, Johnny accused him. Yes. Well, then go. I'm going's fast as I'm able. Oh, Rab, have you ever seen those little eyes at the end of a musket? This is Johnny thinking to himself. Rab, don't you go. Don't you go. Rab was singing under his breath. It was the song of the Lincolnshire poacher that Mr. Revere had taught Johnny, and Johnny had taught Rab. There was something about Rab's singing, low, a little husky, and not too accurate, that always moved Johnny. It was a part of that secret fire which came out in fighting, taking chances, and dancing with girls. The excitement glowed in Rab's eyes now. He was going into danger. He was going to fight, and the thought made some dark part of him happy. Johnny wanted to tell him about those eyes. But instead he said, I guess you really want to get out to Lexington and do some more dancing? Here's hoping. From then on, Johnny said nothing, sitting glumly on his bed, his head bowed. Then Rab came over to him and put a hand on his shoulder. Goodbye, Johnny. I'm off. Johnny did not look up. You're a bold fellow, Johnny Tremaine. He was laughing. Johnny heard Rab's feet going down the ladder. The door of the shop closed after him. He ran to look out the window. Rab was standing outside the Lorne house, shaking hands with his uncle, saying goodbye like a grown man. Now he was bending down to kiss Aunt Jennifer, not at all like a small boy kissing an aunt. He picked up Rabbit, who could toddle about, and kissed him too. Then, half running, he passed lightly up Salt Lane and out of sight. One moment too late, Johnny ran out into the alley. He couldn't let Rab go like that. He had not even said good luck. God be with you. Why, he might not ever see Rab again. He went back to his garret, back into the attic, and flung himself on his bed. He half wished he might cry, and was half glad he was too old for tears. Now, as a person, you're never actually too old for tears, but that would have been a common belief in Esther Forbes' day, right, in the 40s, that once you'd become a man, you were too old for tears. Today, there was no sound from the shops and wharves, no cry of chimney sweep, oysterman, knife grinder. The town was whist and still, for it was Sunday. As Johnny lay upon his bed, the church bells began to call for afternoon service. They babbled softly as one old friend to another. Christ Church and Cockerell, Old South, Old Meeting, Hollis, King's Chapel. He knew every one. He had heard them clanging furiously for fire, crying fiercely to call out the Sons of Liberty. He had heard them toll for the dead, rejoice when some unpopular act had been repealed, and shudder with bronze rage at tyranny. They had wakened him in the morning and sent him to bed at night. But he had never loved them more than on Lord's days, when their golden clamor seemed to open the blue vaults of heaven itself. You could almost see the angels bending down to earth, even to rowdy old Boston. Peace, peace, the soft bells said. We are at peace. Now, bells in churches are literally as big as a person, and they would be rung to signal the time, to announce events. I, as a child, rang bells, and I would pull the cord by jumping up and letting my entire body weight pull the cord, the clapper here, just to get it to ring once. So these bells would be very easy to hear around the entire city. Suddenly, close by, over at the Afric Queen, the British drumsticks fell. The fifes, or the flutes, struck up too-too, toodly-too. Even on Sunday, they were out drilling. So were other men, even on Sunday. For instance, over in Lexington. The 16th of April drew to a close. Monday was a quiet day. Lieutenant Stranger looked very solemn. Maybe there was not to be an expedition, after all.